Your senior yoga teacher, Heather Agnew here, and today we are going to be talking about study strategies for yoga teachers in training. And while these tips are shared to help you mostly in completing your yoga teacher training coursework, my hope is that it will also help you to build habits and strategies that are going to help you beyond training as you build and manage your yoga business. Something I remind students of all the time is in yoga teacher training, you're not just learning about yoga, you're also learning about yourself. And the whole process of teacher training invites you to observe and understand how you engage with work, how you respond to challenges, how you celebrate accomplishments, how you take rest and maintain flow and energy in what you do. Once you're in this process of learning, you can then kind of start to learn what strategies and techniques work best for you to be successful, particularly in your studies. So today we're going to talk about both formal and informal study strategies, but we're really going to dig into approaches for people who struggle with motivation and organization, procrastination, and study avoidance. And this is important because, again, how you approach and organize and coordinate your studies is preparation for how you'll run your yoga teacher practice one day or your business. And as a yoga entrepreneur, whether you teach one day a week or build your own studio or a global yoga empire, you'll need to self motivate and self discipline because there's often no one setting deadlines for you. And thankfully, yoga offers us some tools to support those skills. So let's take just a quick moment to talk about the yoga in your yoga studies. So, looking at our foundational ethics from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the yamas and niyamas, and how they might guide you and support you in your studies. So, the first is brahmacharya. So, here we're looking at energy and time management. So, learning to manage your energy wisely, manage your time wisely. This is important not only for your studies, as I said, but for also creating balance in your future teaching practice and business and, general management of work, life, yoga balance. The second is tapas, so discipline or routine. And this is helping us to learn about how to establish routines and strategies to stay consistent with our studies. And this helps us to build the discipline and the routine that we need to maintain a steady teaching practice and business practice. And the third is svadhyaya, self-study. So understanding your own unique approach and your individual needs and your motivations can empower you to harness your skills and talents effectively. And this self-awareness will support you in all areas of your work and your life and your practice. So those are three foundational ethics or philosophies that we can kind of look to as we're building the strategies and tools and skills for our yoga studies and moving into our yoga teaching practice. I hope you find that useful. Next, I want to talk a little bit about structured study tips. And I'm going to be brief in this section because we've all heard all the structured study tips before. Set study times, have a formal study space, create a study plan. And these are really great strategies that can be really useful for people with a more formal study style or people who thrive with schedules and structure and deadlines. If these techniques work for you, work these techniques. Set yourself up for success by creating that quiet and comfortable study space. Outline your study tasks and goals. Schedule your study sessions. Maybe create deadlines, not just for big tasks, but the small tasks that lead up to it. And in my own life, I've been reflecting on the many ways people approach studying. And I've realized that my own method is quite structured out of necessity. I've been a solopreneur for nearly 30 years. I don't have anyone pushing me to get things done. If it's going to happen, it's entirely up to me. And I don't always start the day with tons of motivation or discipline. But I find that if I can gain momentum, I'm more likely to be successful in what I'm doing. And I spent some time the last couple of weeks thinking about how do I get momentum in my workday or in my studies. And I realized that I do have a technique, and that is follow what you love. So hear me out. I've come to realize that our inner drives and our simple joys can serve as powerful sources of motivation. For me, I love to put things away. I get so much pleasure out of just getting things off my desk, out of my inbox, creating order. And this means that when I have invoices or receipts on my desk, I get those done so I can file them away. And it's so satisfying, it gives me a little boost of energy to move on to the next task. And I was talking to my sister about this, and she's a little bit the same. She makes a binder for any new project or any new studies that she's going to engage in. She's a teacher, so she loves office supplies, choosing a color for the binder and organizing the tabs and making a cover page. And all of this is pleasurable and gives her some momentum for doing the tasks that she finds less enjoyable. So, with this strategy, it's like start with what feels most appealing or doable in the moment, things that'll give you a little bit of joy or a little bit of energy, and let those little tasks naturally flow into others once you're in motion. So, that's actually the strategy that works for me. I also really like micro goals. And I know for lots of our students, they report being motivated by checks or ticking things off. If it gives you a little feeling of pleasure to tick something off a list, harness that motivation. So break your tasks into smaller, non intimidating steps. Instead of study the whole chapter, you might focus on like read one paragraph, highlight key terms. Starting small can create momentum for bigger efforts. Um, and obviously making lists. So finding opportunities to do small tasks that you can tick off, and this can get you rolling into completing more tasks. Yeah, these examples all orient around organization. So if you're like me and organization and creating structure are your jam, follow what you love. Having said all that, the bigger conversation I want to have for today is for those who don't respond so well to these kind of formal or structured study strategies. So let's talk now about unstructured study tips. And unstructured study can be really effective for some people, particularly folks with a less formal study style, for neurodivergent or low energy folks, for those who have limitations in time or in space, or for people who find that more flexible or more creative techniques are a lot more useful. And so, if the idea of scheduling time and place for study gives you the ick, if a binder does not give you joy, I've got tons of ideas for you next for unstructured study strategies. Starting with my three favorite strategies that I'm going to talk about: study snacks, sidle-up-to-it, and body doubling. So, study snacks are all about uh, instead of waiting for a long chunk of time to study, like this perfect study time that often never comes, study snacks are about taking smaller bites of your studies. And this is the same guidance that we might give to our yoga students who are looking to build a home practice. Don't wait for a perfect time or a perfectly clean house or perfect quiet to do yoga. Start with a few spinal warm-ups, a few sun salutations. See where it leads. And maybe that leads to a longer session, or maybe you end with 10 minutes. But 10 minutes beats 0 minutes every time. So with study snacks, there's a couple of ways that you can use this strategy. One of the ways is kind of just to weave space for study snacks into your day, little 10, 15 minutes in those sort of gap places in your day. And not waiting for a perfect time or a place to study. So just grabbing 10 minutes while you wait for the kettle to boil or while you wait for the bus. It can be useful to pair study snacks with other tasks. So for example, I'll like put in a load of washing and then do some study until it's ready to hang on the line or put into the dryer. Study snacks are great to take on the road. So listening to lectures or podcasts or audiobooks or if you have PDF manuals, you can have them read aloud to you on your commute or on the bike or on the treadmill. And moving can often be a great way to really take in the information. And also keep a notebook or voice notes and keep recording your thoughts as they arise. So, read a page, record a few bullet points or voice notes. Do a practice, jot down a few thoughts or reflections. Get ideas out while they're fresh instead of thinking, oh, later on I'm going to write so much on this topic. Jot a few notes or do a few voice notes now, and those can add up. So those are some ideas for study snacks that I hope you find useful. Another strategy that I find really useful is body doubling. So it's a little bit similar to having a study buddy, but body doubling is where you study with someone else in the room, not helping or coaching, just like being there. And they might be studying or reading or just doing their own quiet thing. And this technique is really common in the ADHD community and has been really successful for folks who get easily distracted or who just find the presence of someone else an aid to their studies. So this might mean like going into a library where other people are studying around you, or a cafe, or inviting someone over who's doing their own studies or they're immersed in reading a book. There's also the option of an ambient study buddy. So like play videos in the background or join virtual study rooms where others are working quietly. And platforms like YouTube have tons of videos that kind of simulate the presence of a study buddy, like other people who are studying around you. So those are great techniques if you don't have a physical space you can go to or someone that you can invite over. You can have that kind of playing in the background if that gives you that kind of support. So that's the body doubling strategy. Next is the sidle-up-to-it strategy. And this is a pretty low pressure approach to tackling any tasks. And it's particularly useful when you feel really stuck or you feel overwhelmed or you feel a real resistance to getting started. Instead of trying to force yourself into productivity, you kind of ease your way into the work indirectly. So here's how it works. First, you start with like a related activity. So you engage in something that's kind of tangentially connected to your task. So if you need to write an essay, for example, organize your notes, reread the prompt. If you're preparing for a quiz, browse randomly through your textbook or highlight some key terms without committing to full study mode. So the whole idea here is that you're kind of engaging, but you're not pouring yourself into it completely. Second is to create kind of like a warm-up routine, just like we do for yoga. So you want to approach your task with like small, manageable steps that require minimal effort. So like open your materials and kind of give them a glance. Write one sentence, jot down a few bullet points. Even just setting up your workspace, whether that's at a desk or on the sofa or at the cafe, Set up your workspace without worrying about diving into work immediately. Just kind of like make the space, right? And that kind of focus on the environment is sort of the third step. So you're setting up a space that feels inviting, and this can make your tasks feel a lot more approachable. And whatever that is, having your favorite beverage nearby, playing some calming music, maybe you like to light a candle, sit in your comfiest chair. And this helps you kind of ease into the mood of study rather than trying to confront your tasks directly, right? The fourth tip I have for the sidle-up-to-it strategy is to use curiosity as a hook. So start by exploring something interesting or something maybe less intimidating that's within the task. So if you're studying theory, skim for something that's kind of a fascinating little fact or idea. If you're working on a spreadsheet, take time to format it nicely before you start entering information. Just like my sister with her binders, like do those sort of less intimidating bits first and let that joy or that curiosity lead you into deeper engagement with your studies. The fifth, and this is important, is to remove the pressure of starting. So instead of making rules for yourself, like I'm going to study for 2 hours, tell yourself you're going to just spend 5 minutes looking things over. And often, beginning this way creates natural momentum. And momentum is something that I think is much more useful focus than something like motivation. 6 is pair your task with something enjoyable. So you can do your task while you're sipping your favorite drink, or you're sitting in a sunny spot, or you're listening to your favorite podcast or music. Associating the work with something that's pleasant can really lower your resistance. So if you're feeling a lot of resistance to getting into your studies, find something pleasurable that can kind of hook you in, right? Seventh is to lean into distractions a little bit. So I find it really useful to let your mind kind of wander around the edges of your studies or whatever task you're wanting to do. So daydream or brainstorm. And one of the ways I do this when I'm studying is I'll take some time to kind of percolate and think about, like, how might I teach this in my classes? How might I frame this for my students? Or what might this look like in the context of this environment? And so kind of visualizing how I'm going to use information can really hook me in, even though it feels like I'm distracted because I'm daydreaming. It actually helps me focus more on what I'm doing. It can also be really useful to visualize what your assignment's going to look like finished, or if you're a feelings person, how good you're going to feel when it's done. So, like taking some time to kind of dream that into reality can help you to have some more momentum in your studies. Last tip is end early. Stop before you feel burnt out. Stop before you feel like your brain's so crammed with information you can't even remember what you've done, or that it feels like what you've done is hard. When you end early, you build confidence. It trains your brain to associate the work with like positive feelings rather than dread or like, oh, that was so terrible. It's really the same advice we would give our students if we were giving them guidance for home yoga, or when you're going to start an exercise program. You don't work to absolute failure when it's something you've been resisting. You make it enjoyable, you make it a joy, and then you want to return. So that's really important. And so that's the sidle up to it strategy. And how it works is it kind of removes the pressure of perfection or performance. And so if those are things that you struggle with, this might be a technique that's really useful for you. This technique makes it easier to begin and gives you some gentler steps so that you don't get caught up in thinking this is going to have to be perfect all the time. And by kind of gently engaging with your studies rather than diving straight in, you kind of trick your brain into starting without triggering that overwhelm. And often just beginning leads to unexpected momentum. I have a couple other quick study tips. I know I've shared so much already, but you know me. I have lots to share. A couple of other things that can really support your studies if you're struggling are change your environment. So shift to a new space. It helps to break up monotony. If you've been studying at home, go out to a park or a library or a cafe or even just a different room in the house. New surroundings can kind of reset your focus and re energize your mind. Create a study playlist. Um, and you can either create your own, or there's lots of playlists out there that are designed for focus or inspiration. Often it's music without lyrics. So classical or lo-fi or nature sounds, and these can help create a state of flow. If you tend to be on the competitive side, gamifying your studies can be really useful. So turning your tasks into a little bit of a game. Give yourself points or stickers for completing tasks along the way. If that gives you that little boost, or if it makes it a little bit more fun or interactive for you. And there's apps out there that you can use that can help you to gamify your studies if that's a strategy that works for you. A strategy that really works for me is teaching it to someone else. If I feel stuck in my studies, or I'm not sure that I'm fully understanding the material or integrating it well, I'll teach it to someone else. Force my husband to listen to me or talk to the cat. Talking through concepts can help us to solidify our understanding, and it can also help to reveal gaps in our knowledge. When I can't explain something, I know I've got to go back and figure it out. And so being able to teach it can be a way to get you back into your studies. And for those of you who are creative types, finding ways to study through art or mind maps or storytelling can be really useful. And in our course, we welcome people to write assignments or speak assignments or do videos or draw diagrams or sketch out concepts, narrate a topic as if it's a story. So find ways to use what the communication method that works best for you. And if you're not sure, get curious and try some things out. One more thing, movement breaks. Incorporate movement into your study sessions. So take a quick yoga break, go for a walk, dance around for a few minutes. A little bit of physical activity can help break up mental fatigue and help you refocus. So think, we've got study snacks. We also want to have movement snacks if you're in a longer period of study. So you can set your alarm, or when you feel like you've stopped breathing or you're getting sucked into your computer, stop, take a few minutes. It's going to give you energy to come back. So that's all. Those bunch of suggestions. I know I've shared far too much here, like usual, but I hope that amongst all these ideas, maybe you've heard some ideas that might be worth experimenting with. Um, and just a couple of reminders. You might not study like other people, but that doesn't mean you aren't a good student. It just means you maybe haven't worked out your study style yet. Your studies are an opportunity to also study yourself, to learn about what strategies work best for you, and to lean into those strategies. How you approach study can inform how you will approach work. So think about developing habits and strategies for the long term of not just your yoga teacher training, but your yoga teaching practice or business. And finally, think momentum rather than motivation. So when you're deciding on strategies or playing around with things, what helps you to get some momentum? What helps you get into the flow? Okay. That's all for me today. Thank you so much for listening and being part of this journey with me. I hope you found this useful. If you have questions or concerns, as always, drop me a comment or an email. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much.